Perek Beis Mishna Vov. So a kli generally becomes mekabel tuma. It generally becomes susceptible to tuma when it is fully formed and hardened and the manufacturing is finished. So you have to form the vessel and then you have to harden it in a kiln, an oven made to harden the clay. So we have some pictures here of ancient kilns, ancient ovens where they used to use to harden the clay, to harden the vessels. So you see in this kiln they would put the ovens in here to fire it up and they would take it out. In this one over here, they actually had a temporary dome, so they'd be able to take off the dome to take out the vessels. And once the vessel's fired up, it's susceptible to tuma. So we've learned that a gistera, or shard, can also be mekabel tuma, if it's functional, a functional shard. Now this Mishnah deals with the qualification to that rule, that only shards that broke off of a vessel are mekabel tuma. But a shard that was never from a vessel, it's not mekabel tuma. Because interestingly, human nature is that if you have a vessel and then it broke, so you want to salvage what you can. So you have this salvageable shard over here. So you'll use it for what you can. But if you just find an unfinished piece of pottery, even if it's the same size as your shard, you won't necessarily think of keeping it, even though these two shards look the same. Because this one came from your vessel, so you want to salvage it. This one was never a vessel, so you won't necessarily think of salvaging it. So this one will not be mekabel tuma. This one is mekabel tuma. So the question that our Mishnah deals with is if you find one of these shards on the bottom of one of those kilns, on one of those ovens, are those shards in the bottom of the oven mekabel tuma? So it depends. If the shard broke from a fully formed, fired up vessel, then it comes from a vessel, so it's mekabel tuma. But if the shard broke off of the vessel before it was fired up, while it was still molded before it hardened, so then it was never a vessel yet, and that shard didn't come from a vessel, so it's not mekabel tuma. So let's read the Mishnah. Gistera, or shard, shenimtzeis b'akivshon, that you find in the bottom of a kiln. So is it mekabel tuma? So the Mishnah rules, ad shelo nigmar malachta, if it broke off before it was manufactured, nigmar malachta means it was manufacturing, which happens after the oven fires up the vessel. So if it broke off of the vessel before it got fired up, then tahira, then it's tahar, because this shard didn't come from a fully formed, fully manufactured vessel. But the Mishnah says, Misha nigmar malachta, but if it broke off after it got fired up, after the manufacturing was finished, then tameya. Then the gistra is tameh. And now the question is, how do you know when the shard broke? How do you know if it broke before the vessel got fired up or after? So the Bartanura brings from the Tosefta that the way to determine this is if the break is a clean break, meaning you have a vessel here, and you have the bottom of it broke in a clean fashion. It's not jagged. And the inside of the break is a little bit red, has a reddish tinge. Actually, that's not red. Here's red. So the inside looks a little red. So then you know, since it's red, that it finished before it broke, and then after it finished being fired up, it broke after. So if it looks like this, it is mekabel tuma. But if it's a jagged cut and it's not red, then you know it broke before it got fired up. So that's case 1 in the Mishnah. Now I'm not sure what the connection is between this halacha and the next case that comes up, but the next case deals with an interesting kli, shaped something like this, and it was made to hold water. Now the thing is that the bottom has many teeny small needle-sized holes, so that water slowly drips out. Now the top part of the vessel also has a hole, so you could put your finger on it after you fill it with water, so therefore no air pressure gets in to push down the water, and therefore the water doesn't drip out of the bottom. And then you could take it outside and use it to water your garden. And the question is this titris, it's called a titris, is this titris mekabel tuma? So generally speaking, a kli made to store liquids that has a hole in the bottom, the size that lets liquid enter, if the size hole lets liquid go in, then it's considered a ruined vessel, and is therefore not mekabel tuma, because all your liquid will flow right out. But here in our case, by the titris, each individual hole is so small that liquid wouldn't be able to get in, and it wouldn't invalidate a vessel. But here in our case, you have so many of these small holes, and we're going to see Rebbe Elazar ben Tzadok holds that they therefore combine to a hole the size that lets liquid in, and it renders this vessel, it invalidates it, and it's therefore not mekabel tuma. So let's read it inside. Titris, you have this interesting vessel, Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok mitaher. Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok says he rules that it's tahar, because each small hole combines with the next to create one bigger hole that's the size that lets liquid in, and therefore it's rendered invalid. Now, if you remember from Mishnah Daled, let's pull it up over here. Okay, so regarding the peddler's funnel, the mashpech shel rochlin, so we said that this funnel is mekabel tuma, even though it has a hole in the bottom, because the peddler would plug up the bottom with his finger to measure the oil in it before letting it spill into the small jug, right? So since the normal use was to be used in that fashion, so we said it's mekabel tuma. Now, evidently, Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok in our Mishnah sees a difference between our case, where it's also normal to plug up the titris from the top, which retains the water in, but he still considers it broken and not mekabel tuma. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok sees a difference because the utility of the titris was to use it unplugged to water your garden, and you just plug it up to get there. So maybe that's not considered a vessel retaining its water because the utility of it was to have the water spill out. Or maybe maybe he sees a difference because the funnel you plug up from the bottom, and in our case you're plugging it up from the top. So maybe he sees a difference because of where you plug it up. So that's Shitas Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok. Now the Mishnah brings Rabbi Yossi. Now Rabbi Yossi says that this titris is tameh. He argues with Rabbi Eliezer bar Tzadok because he holds that number one, as we saw by the funnel, it was made to plug up your finger from the top, and it was made to retain liquids that way. And even without that, he holds that since each hole in and of themselves are too small and the water would drip out so slowly, so the holes don't combine to create a bigger hole. So let's read it inside. Rabbi Yossi mitame. Rabbi Yossi holds that this titris is tameh, mipnei shehu kimotzi prutos, because the water leaves, it drips out slowly. Prutos can mean a coin, but it could also mean dripping out slowly. And since each individual hole only drips out water really, really slow, so that doesn't invalidate the vessel, and we don't say that the holes combine to invalidate the vessel. Now it's your turn to read the Mishnah.